You fools have no idea what you've done. That was the last message the Galactic Union received before transmissions from Earth went silent. It all started with a minor skirmish, just another routine suppression mission, as the Zir had done countless times before. Earth was supposed to be just another conquered world, another planet absorbed into their ever-growing dominion. Humans were stubborn, certainly, but they were primitive. They had no faster-than-light travel, no planetary defenses strong enough to resist an interstellar fleet, and no standing army capable of withstanding the might of the Zir. The invasion began with orbital bombardments, striking key population centers, crippling infrastructure, and spreading terror among humanity. Resistance was inevitable but expected to be futile. Yet the humans did not break. They fought in the ruins, in the forests, in the burning cities. They ambushed patrols, sabotaged supply lines, and refused to surrender, even when the odds were insurmountable. Then the Zir made a mistake that sealed their fate. It was meant to be a warning, a public execution designed to demoralize Earth's forces. The broadcast showed a Zir executioner standing over a human child, a boy no older than 6, kneeling in the dirt with defiance in his eyes. The alien commander gave a speech in broken English, declaring humanity's resistance meaningless, its defiance an affront to the order of the galaxy. Then he pulled the trigger. The Zir transmitted the execution across all human communication networks, expecting fear. Instead, they were met with silence, a silence that stretched for minutes, then hours, and then the first response arrived. It was a single transmission, spoken in a voice so calm it sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened Zir warriors. "We are coming." At first, the Zir dismissed it as empty bravado. But then, the counterattacks began. Every occupied city became a graveyard for Zir soldiers. Entire garrisons vanished overnight. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like something else, something the Zir had never encountered before. They fought with a fury that could not be reasoned with, a vengeance that could not be quelled. Human warships, patched together from outdated vessels and repurposed civilian craft, emerged from the darkness of space. They were crude, inferior in design, yet they struck with precision. Entire Zir fleets were annihilated by human ingenuity. Supply lines were severed, strongholds shattered. Captured transmissions revealed human soldiers repeating the same phrase before every battle. For Daniel, the name spread like wildfire across the stars. Zir officers whispered it in fear. Entire planets trembled at its mention. Then Earth launched its retaliation in full force. The Zir commanders were baffled. They had crushed Earth's industry, obliterated its largest cities. How could the humans still produce weapons, still send fleets into space? But the humans had not fought for survival. They had fought for vengeance. And in that vengeance, they had turned every factory, every underground bunker, every scrap of technology into a tool for war. Zir planets burned. For the first time in their history, the Zir experienced the horror of a true counter-invasion. Human soldiers, clad in armor bearing the name of the fallen boy, stormed their homeworlds. They did not speak. They did not take prisoners. One by one, Zir colonies fell. The Galactic Union, which had once turned a blind eye to Earth's suffering, now watched in terror. Their calls for peace were ignored. Their pleas for mercy fell upon deaf ears. And then, the humans arrived at Zir Prime. The skies above the Zir capital darkened as thousands of human ships blotted out the stars. The Zir Emperor, once a figure of absolute authority, now stood powerless as his empire crumbled. A final transmission came from the human fleet, sent directly to the Zir High Command. "You killed one of our children." Then, the bombardment began. Zir Prime burned. The screams of its people echoed across the galaxy. The empire that had stood for millennia crumbled in a single night. The Galactic Union, once indifferent to Earth's suffering, now cowered before its wrath. Earth did not ask for peace. Earth did not negotiate. Earth remembered. The bombardment of Zir Prime lasted 72 hours. Not a single human fleet withdrew. Not a single soldier relented. Every city, every fortress, every war factory was reduced to molten slag. The sky itself seemed to burn, ash blotting out the stars that had once guided the Zir across the cosmos. But this was not the end of their suffering. Deep beneath the ruined surface, in fortified bunkers once thought impenetrable, the last remnants of the Zir leadership trembled. They had always ruled with strength, believing themselves untouchable. They had conquered hundreds of species, crushed resistance with overwhelming force, and reduced entire planets to nothing more than whispers in history. Yet now, as they huddled in the dim glow of failing power cells, their breaths shallow and eyes wide with terror, they realized the truth. They were the ones being hunted. The communication relays still functioned barely. Desperate messages were sent into the void, pleading for intervention. The Galactic Union did not respond. Then, the echoes of approaching footsteps filled the tunnels. Human boots. No words were spoken as the blast doors fell. No demands were issued. The armored figures that entered did not hesitate. Plasma fire roared through the corridors. The last of the Zir High Command fell in seconds. And then silence. The war should have ended there. But the humans did not stop. Reports flooded in from across the remnants of the Zir Empire. Entire planets, once strongholds of their dominion, were found abandoned, their populations vanished. Some whispered that the humans were taking prisoners, though no one could say where they were being taken. Others claimed the humans left nothing behind but empty, lifeless worlds. The Galactic Union, watching from a safe distance, grew uneasy. The humans had been wronged. That much was undeniable. But this was something else. One by one, the remaining members of the Union severed their ties to the fallen empire. Treaties once signed in blood and conquest were now nothing more than dead ink. Those who had once called the Zir allies now denied ever knowing them. But even distance was not safety. A human fleet arrived at the Union's council world. Not a battle fleet, but a single warship. The sight of it alone sent waves of panic through the assembled diplomats. They had seen what the humans had done. They had heard the silence of Zir space, the emptiness left in their wake. The ship did not fire. It simply transmitted a message, a simple question. Where were you? There was no threat, no declaration of war. But the meaning was clear. The humans knew who had stood by and done nothing. The council deliberated in secrecy. Some argued for war, believing that humanity had grown too powerful. Others feared that any conflict would only end one way. The humans waited. Across the stars, more fleets gathered, not just from Earth, but from the colonies that had risen in the war's aftermath. New ships, new weapons, new alliances forged not through diplomacy, but through vengeance. The rest of the galaxy had always viewed humanity as an oddity, an upstart species with no real grasp of the vast political landscape governing the stars. That illusion was shattered. There were no negotiations, no peace talks. The humans were not asking for anything. They were waiting. They wanted to discuss reparations, to apologize, to mend relationships before it was too late. Humanity never replied. The silence was worse than any threat. The few who dared to reach out to former Zir worlds found only ruin. They expected to find mass graves or conquered cities, but instead, they found nothing. Not a trace of the original populations. Not a single survivor. It was as if the Zir had never existed. This was not conquest. It was eradication. Still, some members of the Union believed humanity could be reasoned with. Perhaps a demonstration of goodwill, a formal recognition of their suffering, would be enough. Perhaps the humans simply needed time to cool their rage. That illusion was shattered when the first of their own worlds was found abandoned. Not attacked, not bombed, abandoned. Entire cities left untouched, power still running, ships still docked. But the people were gone. No signs of struggle, no trace of where they had gone. just an empty world and the knowledge that the humans had been there. The galaxy had seen countless wars before. Empires had risen and fallen. Civilizations had been crushed, and planets had been turned to dust. But this was something else. This was a war not just against the Zir, but against the very idea that anyone could stand by and watch. This was a message, one that no one dared to misunderstand. For now, the humans waited, but the galaxy knew. If another war ever came, humanity would not be the ones to start it, but they would be the ones to finish it. The silence stretched across the stars. The Galactic Union debated, delayed, and hoped the humans would simply stop. But humanity was patient. They did not fire the first shot. They simply existed. An unspoken force, a reminder of what happened to those who underestimated them. Some species called for preemptive strikes, believing humanity's restraint to be a deception. They whispered of ancient wars, of species that had risen too quickly and had to be culled before they consumed all in their path. But no fleet dared to challenge the humans. Instead, the first true act of war came from the remnants of the Zir, those who had fled into the dark. A desperate attack. A fleet assembled from salvaged vessels, crippled warships, and stolen resources. A final attempt to strike at Earth, to end the nightmare. It never reached its destination. Human warships intercepted them at the edge of the Sol system. The battle lasted less than an hour. The Zir fleet was wiped from existence, their last hope extinguished. There were no survivors. And with that, the Zir name was erased from history. The Galactic Union, now fully aware of the force they had ignored for too long, sent envoys. They arrived on Earth expecting demands. They found only a message. You watched. It was not a request, not a declaration. It was a reminder. The envoys left without an answer. Across the galaxy, the realization spread. Humanity had not conquered for power. They had not waged war for expansion. They had done something far worse. They had remembered, and they would never forget. For decades, no one spoke of the war. No one dared to ask what had happened to the planets once ruled by the Zir. The territories were empty, devoid of life. No new colonies were built in their place. No scavengers dared to search the ruins. The void remained untouched. But every species knew one thing. Somewhere in that silence, humans were watching, and they were waiting. The Galactic Union had never feared a single species before, not like this. They had always known conflict, always believed they could survive any war, negotiate any treaty, outlast any enemy. But this time was different, because the humans did not see them as enemies. They saw them as bystanders. And that was worse. The races of the Union had fought wars before, had crushed rebellions, had seen civilizations rise and fall. But never before had they seen an entire species fight like humanity had fought. Not for resources, not for conquest, but for justice. And justice, they realized too late, was far more dangerous. Because justice did not stop at one enemy. Justice had no borders, no limits, no compromise. Justice remembered, and justice was patient. The Union's leaders tried to understand, tried to predict what humanity would do next. Some believed they would remain silent forever, watching but never striking. Others feared they would find a new enemy, a new injustice to correct. But the most terrifying possibility was the simplest one, that the humans did not need war anymore, that their silence was enough. For generations, the Union's fleets patrolled their borders, watching the empty spaces where the Zir once ruled, waiting for some sign of movement, some sign that the war would begin again. But nothing came. Human ships still traveled the stars. Their influence spread quietly, efficiently. And yet, no one knew their true purpose. No species dared to find out. And so, the galaxy changed, not through conquest, not through diplomacy, but through fear. The Galactic Union, once the ultimate authority in the known universe, now lived under the shadow of a single truth. A truth whispered in every council hall, in every war room, in every diplomatic chamber, you do not harm a human child, because if you do, you may not live long enough to regret it.